Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and even JP Morgan themselves are saying that the coronavirus lockdown has ruined millions of lives, and we're going to get into this news and more today. But first, make sure to hit the like button, share on social media to help us out with this massive shadow banning, and more importantly, don't watch us on YouTube, watch it on BitChute, and join us on Flote.app. Join us on these other platforms and join our new newsletter below. There's no point to be on YouTube anymore. We've been demonetized, and we can't thank you all enough for any help that you can give us to help us bring that information out and expose the lies and the snakes hiding in the shadows right now in this very strange time. Anyway, I want to get into this article here. As it says out of the Sun, down and out, lockdowns made no difference to coronavirus but destroyed millions of livelihoods worldwide, JP Morgan study claims. And as it goes into, lockdowns have not altered the course of the coronavirus pandemic but have devastated the global economy, a study by JP Morgan has claimed. A paper by Marko Kolanovic, a strategist at the investment bank, argued that governments were spooked into imposing lockdowns that were late or inefficient. Well, look, guys, we will not be arguing here about how unbelievably inefficient the government is, but this wasn't about just inefficiency. This was a planned pandemic, if you will. And I'm going to go into this more in a moment, but first let me just loosely explain for those that are going, what are you talking about? Maybe new viewers. So we have to look back at the fact that Dr. Fauci, who is funded by Gates and working with the World Health Organization as well, which is funded by Gates and headed by Tedros, one of the heads of the Ethiopian Communist Party, Dr. Fauci was working as the head of the Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases with millions of dollars in grants from the U.S. government at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where they studied coronavirus in bats that were 96% similar to novel coronavirus, with the task of being able to create something that can spread to humans. Now, what are the coincidences there? And then Fauci makes a killing. All these guys, Bill Gates included, make a killing off of this pandemic. And on top of that, government is able to gain intense amounts of control over the populace, which benefits government more than anything else. And you are basically whisked into the subservience of being forced into your kennel, and the global economy collapses. The Federal Reserve prints insane amounts of money, and you end up with a bunch of people with tracing apps following them everywhere, forced vaccines, all that kind of stuff, and you can't even leave your country in most cases. So I'm going to get back to the story, but I wanted to pretext it with that because what we're witnessing today is clearly the biggest power grab in history. So I don't think that, by accident, the government befuddled the whole situation and now we have this panic. I think it was all by design. But nonetheless, let's get back into the article here. As it continues, it says, it shows a figure 2 here. The vast majority of countries have decreased COVID-19 infection rates after national lockdowns were lifted. Daily infection rate post-lockdown. Increased infection rate after lockdown ends, and you could see very tiny amounts here and there. And then decreased infection rate after lockdown end. So, I mean, we're clearly seeing it go in a better direction, even according to JP Morgan, one of the most criminal banks in the world. The study shows the infection rates in numerous countries continuing to fall after lockdowns were eased. Countries around the world introduced lockdown measures as a number of coronavirus cases grew in the opening months of this year and have seen infection rates fall significantly since. Kolanovic claimed that numbers had declined because the virus likely has its own dynamics that are unrelated to often inconsistent lockdown measures. He cites as evidence a number of places whose infection rates or R values have continued to fall despite restrictions being lifted. Denmark's infection rate has remained stable following the reopening of schools and shopping centers near the end of last month. As of May 18th, its R value was estimated to be 0.6 compared to 0.7 on May 7th. An R value of 1 or greater indicates that the spread of the virus through population is accelerating. Germany has also eased measures and has seen its R value remain below 1. The study includes graphs showing numerous other countries that have followed a similar pattern since easing their own lockdowns. Partial lockdowns as well as social distancing guidelines remain in place in most countries, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said Europe could see a second wave of the virus if restrictions are lifted too quickly. So before we get into the economic devastation, let's talk about that for a moment. The second wave that everyone's supposed to be afraid of. Now, first of all, I want to point out that there have been a lot of controversies over reopenings in Texas and places like that, and they say the infection rate has skyrocketed. But most of the infections happened before they opened, and in some cases, within 14 hours of opening, they're going, thousands of new cases. We're seeing massive devastation. This is all because they opened and people were allowed out of their kennels and stuff like that. And it's like, that's not scientific at all. We're told for years that we have to listen to fake doctors on TV like Dr. Oz and listen to everything they say about vaccines. And then even people like Dr. Oz are like, no, this is nonsense. And they're like, don't listen to him. Then you have epidemiologists, virologists, immunologists that are saying something different. And they're like, don't listen to them. Censor that stuff. But you have to listen to the little Swedish girl, Greta Thunberg. And you have to listen to evil scientist from the... He's not even a scientist, a computer nerd from the 70s, Bill Gates, who makes billions off of this crisis right after leaving Microsoft conveniently. So, with that said, we're talking about a second wave hitting, which we're seeing lockdowns in China. This is a perfect situation. You open things up a little bit over the summer, you let people out of their kennels for a little while, and then they come in with some new thing that affects children, and they say, see, we told you, you're selfish for wanting to feed your family. Go back into your kennels or else. And that's exactly what I see happening right now. I see exactly that happening at this moment. We are getting led into a new faked pandemic that's going to affect kids, and we see the illness that's apparently affecting children right now in Britain. Anyway, I think this is a perfect situation for them to create another issue of order out of chaos, right? They're going to come after this and say, look at all these problems that you guys caused. Now, on top of that, I want to show how the lockdown actually did affect things. And it's been extremely negative, and we can show this chart, which I've shown before, which says non-lockdown versus lockdown. The green is deaths per million in non-lockdown countries. The red is deaths per million in lockdown countries. Now, the one country we're hearing about all the time on the news regarding not locking down is Sweden. But Sweden, of all the countries that have not locked down, have the highest death rate. So I think that's a wrong stat to utilize in this pandemic. I see things like Taiwan that has 0.3 deaths per million, and they didn't lock down. We have Japan, 3 deaths per million, and they didn't lock down. And I'm in Mexico right now, and Mexico had 14 deaths per million. Meanwhile, Belgium, which locked down, has 665 deaths per million. Spain has 525 deaths per million, and they locked down. Italy has 483 deaths per million, and they locked down. And the US has 193 deaths per million, and they locked down. And they also are faking the numbers dramatically and giving people who are symptomatic of COVID, which could be literally just a cough or a sneeze or a runny nose, they're counting them into the statistics, which is fraudulent. And now, talking about the issue of millions of people dying, well, we didn't see that. We were told, 3.5% to 7% death toll, and then it ended up being 0.08% to 0.2%. Which is dramatically low. The seasonal flu is around 0.1%. So we are just around the average. And yet, people are still accepting this lockdown. The Karens, if you will. Sorry to anyone named Karen. There's a lot of nice people named Karen out there, but it's become a meme. I can't escape it. The let me talk to the manager haircut has become a named meme, named after, unfortunately for everyone named Karen. Anyway, let's talk about the economic devastation, because this is... on top of the massive control complex that we've seen rise up surrounding this, and just the threat that it's been to everyone's individual freedoms, and the fact that so many people just willingly give it away. I mean, I've been developing a suntan out of civil disobedience. Let's talk about the economic devastation, which was bound to happen eventually. As it says, economic devastation. Kolanovic also expressed concern about the economic fallout from the lockdowns. Gee, you don't say. And I quote, "Unlike rigorous testing of new drugs, lockdowns were administered with little consideration that they might not only cause economic devastation, but potentially more deaths than COVID-19 itself," he claimed. Even Bill Gates said that. And I quote, "At the same time, millions of livelihoods were being destroyed. Already, the economic impact of the virus has forced governments to pass significant bailout packages to help workers and businesses, and in many cases print insane amounts of money and benefit themselves. In the case of Britain, they're talking about taking the debt from the small businesses that cannot pay the debt back and taking equity in the company, which is fascism. It was complete fascism, guys. This is exactly what we've been aiming at for a long time. A lot of what we've been seeing slowly, incrementally roll out into that direction for many years. And 52% of businesses, small businesses, say they will not be able to survive this after a couple more weeks. And, about 24% of all restaurants say they will never reopen again. Think of the amount of jobs that is. Think about the amount of welfare. Think about the amount of printing. Think of the price of living going up once it's realized and it's not just going into the stock market. This is absolutely devastating. Now, anyway, let's get back into the article here. As it continues, it says, figures today showed the UK's public sector net borrowing rose to £62.1 billion in April, £51.1 billion more than in the same month last year, which is insane. Governments have been warned that some restrictions on movement as well as social distancing measures will likely need to remain in place until a vaccine for the virus has been developed. Of course, they're going to say until a vaccine's developed on this thing that they claim that you can get twice, even though that's not scientific, which if you can get it twice, that means you don't get antibodies, which means the vaccines do nothing. We're told that we have to be force vaccinated, and it will be forced, guys, eventually. They won't succeed in it, but they will attempt that before you're allowed to go outside, and you'll have a tracing app and a social credit score tied to it. And you can see this figure here, are during lockdown versus after lockdown end by U.S. state, increased R0 after lockdown ended, and you can see decreased R0 after lockdown ended there. The study also shows the infection rates for U.S. states before and after lockdown. So I do want to note for a moment here that JP Morgan is telling a half-truth here. And that's how limited hangouts work. That's a CIA term, by the way. Limited hangout means you tell part of the truth, but not the entirety of the truth, to distract people from the entirety of the truth. And the fact is that what we've seen with the government lockdowns, what we've seen with the banking industry is fraudulent. It's terrorism. It's absolute terrorism. Terrorism being based on fear, utilizing fear to spread an ideology. And that ideology is control and centralization. And what we're seeing JP Morgan say here is that it caused the economic devastation. It was a catalyst for the economic devastation, without a doubt, but it didn't cause it. The cause of the economic devastation has been 100 years of central planning, has been the last 50 years of intense central planning utilizing the fiat currency system. It's been the utilization of market manipulation, which, by the way, the U.S. government has just dictated stock market manipulation as a form of terrorism, unless they do it, and they're the MVPs of it. So, again, always entertaining to watch the doublespeak of the establishment. But the fact of the matter is, millions of people are out of work. They're looking at an unemployment rate of about 30% right now, according to the Fed, and the numbers are faulty to begin with, as we've reported for years. The numbers, you have to also counter in the labor force participation rate, which would bring the unemployment rate up to about 45% right now. And you have children starving before this even happened. People just saw the middle class get wiped out over the last 40, 50 years. Much of that due to inflation, much of that due to debt. And then we also see at the same time this devastation of small businesses, this devastation of the purchasing power of the currency. We're talking about negative interest rates right away, though the Fed says they're not doing that yet, but they definitely will. I guarantee you, they said last December that they won't see interest rates change in 2020 at all. We've seen it drop dramatically, and we're going into negative. We're basically negative. We're at zero right now. The economic fallout of this worldwide will lead to starvation, which they'll blame on climate change. It will lead to more control. It will lead to desperation, and that is the most important part to point out here. desperation, dependency. People, when they are dependent on certain money and they lose that money, then become dependent on the state, which took away that money. Remember, the coronavirus didn't cause this. The government caused this. They're the ones that locked down. They're the ones that lied. They're the ones that pushed this insane power grab. They're the ones that utilized their cheerleader Karens to rally their point of view and, tattle on neighbors for walking their dogs. They're the ones that push for police to beat up mothers in subway stations while their 2 or 3-year-old daughter watches. They're the ones that have cops beating people over the head for not wearing masks while those cops are not wearing masks. They're the ones that spread this propaganda, and they're the ones that should be paying for it at the end of the day, but not by stealing people's money, not by printing money. They should be paying for it with prison. They let a bunch of murderers out of prison and now are putting soccer moms in jail for going to the park. I cannot tell you more than I already have how much this pisses me off, because I'll just flip out. I'm trying to stay calm. But what they've done to the average person in the United States, Canada, Britain, elsewhere is nothing short of absolute terrorism. And the fact that nobody is willing to do anything about it, and that people are still talking about elections at this point, really concerns me. Really concerns me. JP Morgan themselves are trying to save their own butts because they know what this is causing. And they're going to tell part of the truth and say, hey, this caused an economic crisis. No, banks like JP Morgan caused an economic crisis. Fractional reserve lending caused an economic crisis. Massive central planning, propping up the stock market, creating a massive bubble, and then having such a weak system that literally anything that could come along could blow it over like dominoes and lead to this massive collapse. They knew exactly what they were doing for years, and now they're trying to save their ass. And the government's trying to save their ass too. They're saying, okay, we'll open it up for a little bit, and then they'll come in later on with a second shutdown, force everyone into their homes, probably in the fall or something. They utilize winter to push this further. They're not going to relent control once they have it, my friends. They are going to let you eat cake for a month, maybe 2 months, before they come in and do this again. And people are doing absolutely nothing about it. We see some people protesting, which is great. We see the average person becoming an activist and civil disobedience activist. That's great. We're seeing militia in Michigan rising up, which is great. But we're not seeing enough done. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it there. The devastation from this cannot be calculated yet. We will continue to report on it, however, and we have been warning since January that this would happen, and we were just told there's no scientific evidence that we're going to see an economic crisis. And I'm like, this isn't science. This is basic economics. What isn't science is claiming that something that has a 0.08% death toll makes sense to force everyone into their homes, wear masks that don't work, suffocate and lose 30% of the oxygen to their brain wearing those masks, force into their home not getting vitamin D, which is crucial to your immune system, and viruses being a dead entity that enters your system and causes your immune system to attack itself, which you need a strong immune system for. I mean, this was all a lie from the beginning. None of it was scientific. It's all absolutely insane. Telling people walking down the beach, if they're even allowed to walk on the beach, because this is a fascist, communist hellhole of a world we're living in right now. Telling people that walk down the beach that they need to wear a mask when they're by themselves and stuff. And just, it is the mark of the slave. It is the star of David on your arm at this point. Anyway. Make sure to check those links below. Join our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Hit that like button. Share on social media to get around the shadow banning. And make sure to, if you can, pledge, GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. Anything helps, guys, to keep us alive. Flote, BitChute. We're on Library at WAM as well. But we're on Hive. We're on Steam. We're on all those things. But most importantly, go join us on flote.app, flote.app, as well as BitChute. We hope to see you there. We won't be here on YouTube much longer. They demonetized us because we didn't toe the line of the World Health Organization. They literally said that. So, we need your guys' help. Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribe Star. We really can't do it without you. We've been so insanely shadow banned, about 90% at this point, and 95% demonetized. As Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, comes in and says that she is shutting down quote-unquote controversial content and cutting out the views on this controversial content by 70%. She's been bragging about it. We need your help more than ever in this battle for truth in information. You guys are what keeps us alive, so we really appreciate just even $1 a month makes a huge difference. If everyone could give just $1 a month, we wouldn't even have to worry about competing against a mainstream propaganda networks. You can also donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen for you to scan if you please, as well as in the comments and description. Liking and sharing makes a big difference as well, and finding us on alternative social media platforms like flote.app, that's flote.app, makes a huge difference. We're at Josh Sigurdson as well as at Wham. Flote is replacing Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon all in one with encrypted private messaging, and of course monetization on videos for creators, live streams with super chats in crypto, and most of all, no algorithm, because at the end of the day, it's all about reach, guys. This is all about actually reaching people with the message and waking up the public. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, Minds, BitChute, all sorts of different platforms. Try to follow us on as many things as possible, because very soon this channel will very likely just be completely deleted from YouTube, and you'll never see us again, and you'll be stuck with only the mainstream networks. Also, come on out and see us at Anarcho Vegas 2020 in Las Vegas, Nevada in July, where such speakers such as G. Edward Griffin and many others will be speaking. You could use promo code WHAM on your VIP tickets and save 10%, as well as buy extremely cheap tickets for just $20.20. You won't find a cheaper conference than this with such amazing names. Check anarchovegas.com for more information on that. We hope to see you out there. And anyway, I really appreciate all of you guys joining us. You make it possible for us to survive in this volatile, propagandized climate. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Bye.